The Nashville Predators currently find themselves in fourth place in the Central Division after 64 games skated. Their record of 36-25-3, 75 points has the Nashville Predators 8 points shy of an automatic qualifying playoff spot of third place in the Central Division, and currently 10 points shy of first place in the Central Division. We will update the Central Division standings and the wild card standings, which are currently very important to this Nashville Predators team, in a moment. The Nashville Predators, after this homestand, have improved their home record to 18-5-1. As you remember, before the Predators came home for this homestand, the Predators had a losing record on home ice. Also on the road, which is where the Nashville Predators next game will take place. They have a record of 18-10-2. They've scored 206 goals in the season. They've given up 196 goals. That is a goal differential of +10. Now, I promised you updated Central Division standings, so let's talk about it. We always start with a three-team weave at the top of the division. The Dallas Stars currently in first place after 64 games skated. They have 85 points. The Winnipeg Jets are in second place, 61 games skated, 83 points. Colorado is in third place, 64 games skated, 83 points. So the Winnipeg Jets obviously have the advantage here, 3 more games in hand than either of the other two teams they're competing with for the division title, and first to third place is separated by 2 total points. The Nashville Predators just on the outside of that window looking in, so they are in the rearview mirror, but the Predators solidly in a wild card spot. As a matter of fact, they're in wild card 1 at this moment in time. The Predators have 75 points. Behind the Preds, chasing them in fifth place is the St. Louis Blues, 8 points behind the Nashville Predators with 67 points. The Minnesota Wild are in sixth place, and they have 66 points, 9 points behind Nashville. Arizona and Chicago are out of it, and they have 55 points and 37 points, respectively, 7th and 8th place in the Central Division. When it comes to the wild card standings, the Nashville Predators have moved into wild card 1 with 75 points. The Vegas Golden Knights have tumbled to wild card 2 with 73 points. And on the outside, looking in, is Calgary and Seattle, each with 67 points. So the Predators have an 8-point cushion now and of a playoff spot with only 18 games remaining in the season, and the Predators are at least in the rearview mirror of the top 3 teams in the Central Division. Realistically, are they going to punch through and penetrate into that race? Don't think so, but the closer they are to that race, the better they are in the wild card race, and it's a playoff spot nonetheless. That's got you updated on the Central Division. That's also got you updated on the wild card standings. Now, let's talk about this Nashville Predators team briefly. They are now going on the road. This first game is going to be in Columbus. That's going to be on Saturday early. Make sure you note the start times, matinee start times all weekend long. Saturday and then Sunday in Minnesota. So back-to-back for the Nashville Predators after this 5-game homestand. Off for 2 days after the back-to-back, then in Winnipeg on Wednesday night, and then off on Thursday and Friday, and in Seattle on Saturday. On the 19th of March, the Nashville Predators will be back home to face off against San Jose Sharks. On the 21st of March, the Nashville Predators will be in Florida to take on the best team in the NHL, the Florida Panthers. So the Nashville Predators definitely have a big-time back-to-back this weekend, but a winnable back-to-back. And one of those games is against a Central Division rival that is still lurking around the wild card picture. The season series between the Nashville Predators and the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are the Nashville Predators' next opponent. This is just a scheduling oddity. They play again at Nashville on the 13th of April. So this is the first time that these two teams are meeting this year. We are all the way into March, and the Nashville Predators are just now meeting one of the opponents on the schedule for the first time in this season. The Columbus Blue Jackets have an overall record of 22, 31, and 10. 54 points has them in 8th and last place in the Metropolitan Division. On home ice, they have a record of 12, 16, and 4. They've scored 191 goals in the season. They've given up 230 against. That's a goal differential of -39. We always go back through the previous 5 for the Nashville Predators' next opponent. So let's go back and start on the 29th of February. A 4-2 loss for the Jackets versus the Carolina Hurricanes. And on March the 2nd, a 5-2 win at the Chicago Blackhawks. On the 4th of March, a 6-3 win versus the Vegas Golden Knights. And on the 5th of March, a 5-3 loss at the Pittsburgh Penguins. On the 7th of March, their most recent game, it was a 4-2 win versus the Edmonton Oilers. Now, when it comes to this Columbus team, their rankings are not very impressive, but you cannot take them lightly. The Edmonton Oilers just suffered a loss in Columbus. The Nashville Predators should see that as a red flag and a warning. Don't let this be a trap game before heading into a divisional game on Sunday in Minnesota. So let's talk about the rankings and the numbers. But again, these should be looked at with caution because these are the types of lures that get thrown out there that teams can sometimes be deceived by, and there are still plenty of quality NHL players on this Columbus Blue Jackets team, but the Nashville Predators are going to have at least a little bit of a different look going into this weekend. We'll talk about that here in a second. Let's talk about the rankings and the matchup between these two teams before we get into trade deadline information. Most updated, this show being recorded just after the trade deadline ended, so we have the Nashville Predators final trade list with us right here. We'll get to that here in just a second. The Columbus Blue Jackets are scoring 3 goals per game this season. That's 21st overall in the NHL. The Nashville Predators are generating 3.19 on net per game. That is 14th overall in the NHL. In the goals against category, the Preds give up 3.06 per game. That's 16th. The Columbus Blue Jackets give up 3.63 per game. That is 31st, one spot from last in the NHL. In the shots on goal category, the Predators 31 per game is 14th. Columbus Blue Jackets 30.2 per game is 19th. In the shots against category, Predators giving up 30.3 per game is 20th overall in the league. The Columbus Blue Jackets are 30th rated in the league, giving up 33.3 shots against per game. When it comes to the special teams matchup, the Nashville Predators are actually ahead in both of these statistical metrics. They should be. They're a playoff team right now, and the Columbus Blue Jackets are not. The power play conversions for the Nashville Predators on the season, 18th overall in the league, 20.2%, 44 conversions on 218 opportunities. Columbus's conversion rate is 14.4%. They are 30th overall in the NHL. They convert 25 times at 174 opportunities. When it comes to the penalty kill, the Preds' kill rate, 76.8%, is 24th. Not that great, but it is better than Columbus being rated 25th at 76.2%. 46 power play goals against, though, for Nashville is worse than Columbus's 43 power play goals against. Neither of those numbers are exactly very good. Now, we want to talk about the trade deadline and trade information before we wrap up the end of this recap. The Nashville Predators did make 2 more deals leading up to the deadline on trade deadline day, and it was Dennis Gurianov heading off to the Philadelphia Flyers for Wade Allison. Let's just consider that an AHL to AHL exchange right there. Both of those players, similar situations and storylines, both of them trying to rehab their early hyped careers. So Allison will now get an opportunity to come to the Predators organization. The old new scenery, fresh start thing for Allison. Let's see what he can do in the future. So the other trade made by Barry Trotz today, the 2024 6th round pick is headed off to Arizona, and that is for Jason Zucker. 9 goals, 16 assists on the season for 25 points. He's a left winger. He's got 679 games of experience, 191 goals, 172 assists in his career, 363 points. So the Nashville Predators give up just a draft pick. Remember, they collected a wealth of draft picks in David Poyle's final trade deadline last year, leading up to the trade deadline when they dismantled much of the roster. So for the Nashville Predators on the day, they traded Dennis Gurianov, who was frankly not going to be a part of this Nashville Predators picture, and in his opportunities did not seize the momentum. He had enough games to make an impression, and the impression he made was that he was expendable to Philadelphia for another player of the same type, and trading away a 6th round pick to Arizona for Zucker. None of the trades the Nashville Predators made are considered risk. Beauvillier should be in the lineup here. He was traded for yesterday. Beauvillier should be in the lineup this weekend. He's already here in Nashville practicing. So for the Nashville Predators, what they did was remove Yakov Trenin from the everyday roster, and they imported Beauvillier and now Zucker onto the roster, and both of them should probably get plenty of ice time with this Nashville Predators team for who are looking to make a run. The team has been crystal clear about this. The reason that they didn't sell off other potential free agents in the upcoming cycle. And the reason they didn't make any other big sell-off moves is because they want to make a run. They're currently in the wild card one spot with 75 points. They have an 8-point cushion over the two teams on the outside looking in, and the Predators have picked up 19 of their last 20 points. There's 18 games to go in the season. The Predators have an opportunity to get into the playoffs, and with the players that they currently have in the roster, they have bolstered by a little bit of playoff experience, which is what Beauvillier and Zucker bring to this roster. The Nashville Predators are looking to make that run. So trade deadline overall involving the Nashville Predators is considerably light. That's why we didn't talk about it very much. That's why we make a big deal about it. Unless the Predators were going to be big-time sellers, this is how it was going to be. A couple of not very high-risk deals for a couple of very low importance assets going out. Yakov Trenin was an important asset, important enough. I liked him as a player, that's for sure. I like covering his career. So trade deadline for the Nashville Predators, a couple of moves, all of them relatively safe. What's going to change after today, after the trade deadline? Beauvillier into the lineup and Zucker into the lineup. Trenin no longer a part of the Nashville Predators. Everything else should remain exactly the same. No change at goaltending, as had been widely speculated. No change on the defense. They're going to remain with the pairs that have been successful for the last 10 games, the 5-game road trip that the Predators swept, and the 5-game homestand that they went 4-0-1 on, picking up 19 and 20 points. The roster convinced management that they were going to be able to stick together and try to make a run at it. Now, what can they do when they get there? Who knows? But the whole point of the 82-game regular season is simply to end up in the tournament. And the Predators looking to make a run at that. Looking forward to seeing Beauvillier in the lineup. Out of the players acquired and the changes, Beauvillier, watched him a lot with the New York Islanders. I thought that he's very, very good professional player. A lot like the way O'Reilly, Nyquist, these players were questioned by Barry Trotz bringing in at the beginning of the season. A lot of the same questions are being raised right here, and if they pan out the way O'Reilly and Nyquist have panned out, well, then these are going to be great additions. You know, Barry Trotz has plenty of experience when it comes to Beauvillier, when he was the head coach of the New York Islanders, and they made a couple of playoff runs. And, of course, the head coach of the Nashville Predators, Andrew Burnett, goes all the way back to Minnesota with Zucker. So there's a lot of commonalities between what the Nashville Predators and the moves that they made, and they're continuing to build the roster and build the core, and right now they're in a playoff spot. So they didn't do a lot of movement, but they did make some adjustments. Now, let's talk about the individual scores and statistics for this matchup coming up in this next game. Get your heads back wrapped around that. Forsberg, 33 goals, 34 assists now for 67 points on the season. The captain, Roman Josi, at 15 goals and 47 assists for 62 points. Gus Nyquist is at 17 goals and 39 assists for 56 points. O'Reilly, 23 and 32 for 55. Novak, 13 goals, 22 assists, 35 points on the season. Over on the other side of the ledger, the Columbus Blue Jackets hosting the Nashville Predators. Their leading scorer is Johnny Hockey. Johnny Gaudreau, 10 goals and 35 assists. I've almost completely forgotten about him. 45 points on the season. Werenski, 4 and 34 for 38. And it is going to be Marcello for 17 and 15 for 32. Varnikov, 17 goals, 14 assists for 31 points. And Boom Jenner, 19 goals and 10 assists for 29 points overall in the season. The anticipated goaltending matchup, the head coach of the Nashville Predators, Andrew Burnett, in back-to-backs, has gone with UC Saros on the first night of back-to-backs a couple of times, and we'll see what he's going to do this time. But his updated stats: 27, 21, and 3, 907 save percentage, 2.83 goals against average, and 2 shutouts. Elvis Merzlikins, 12 goals. Man, if he had 12 goals, he would be having one hell of a year. Columbus would not be in last place. 12, 13, and 7 is his record. 904 save percentage, 3.21 is his goals against average. That's going to do it to get you all set up for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Remember to note that start time early. It's in the AM, as a matter of fact, so make sure you are ready for that. We'll be in the trenches covering it all. We'll have it all broken down for you probably shortly after lunch when that game wraps up. So we will be back with more on this episode. That does it for the preview. We've got to talk about the recap. It's called the Reverse Sports Full Game Recap. It's coming up next right here on the Renegades of Puck podcast.